properties now, of course, they're missing a description. So the current customer lifetime value based on our ZLV table. So I pretend I have a customer lifetime table in my database, and so this is basically, but I want to basically point out where this data originally comes from. So table, okay, so, and now something important, what kind of type is that? So, okay, I could expect it as a string, but string doesn't really make sense because I want to use this in my analytics tool later to basically sum it up, because I want to see, okay, what was the average customer lifetime value that was signed in today into my application. So I should change that. In that case, most likely that I use float. Float is basically like a number with decimals, and so it's most likely that I will have it. So it's not like I could also do it in integer, but it's most likely that it's not an integer because we usually don't have just integer prices. And so float totally makes sense to do it. So, and is it always sent? No, actually not. We just send it sometimes. And this is also important. So if I set it to always send, it's basically when I later have my validation running, it will always check if it's present. And if not, it will raise an alert. Because I know already that like the ZLV, I might just send with some account events, I just say, okay, I just send it sometimes. And then it's not mandatory, then it's optional. I could also, I rarely use it, but I could also, depending on the source. So I could say, for example, for mobile, we always send the ZLV, but from web, we don't. So I can distinguish between those. There might be use cases for it. I rarely use them. Okay, this already looks good. So let's check another one. This one is also interesting. So the status of the account. Not a perfect description because like it's pretty obvious. Showing if the account is still in use. So this is one version of it. And I show you another thing that you can do here to give the people more context what they can expect here. So of course it makes sense to do it as a string because we will basically give a string here. But what we can do is like, we already know that we have this different kind of status. So like we have active, inactive, suspended, and deleted. So right now we don't have different ones. So we expect that the value would be one of these four. And that's good because we want to enforce that. So let's do that. And so first of all, we say, okay, we always want to send this. This is an important thing. We always want to have it. And then what we do is like we create a rule. And so we say, okay, it can be active, or it can be inactive, or it can be suspended, or it can be deleted. So what it does now is basically like when we have the inspector running, it would check also like against the values if it would just check them within a segment. And so it will check if these values are present, and if something else is present, it will give you a warning. And this is super great, especially like for property fields where you have a list of possible values, let's say 5 to 10. So of course it doesn't make sense if you have 200 because you would have to create 200 rules. If it's super important and you want to invest the time, also possible. But usually like in my most cases, it's like you have 5 to 10 different kind of values and you want to use it here. And so, and by that, we can make sure that we basically get these kind of values. And so if not, we can get an immediately alert, and then we can go back to the developers and can say, actually, this is problematic. Why is it important? I can tell you, because this is an important information. You will have reports that will show active users logged in today or over time. And so if a developer is starting to not add active here, but maybe would start to do it like this, which reads the same, but for a system, it's a different value because it has a capital letter in the front. If a developer would, for some reasons, start to add this, every report downstream will break. and will show actually we don't have active users anymore because you set the filter criteria on this kind of value. And so this is why it's so super important, why it's really helpful to enforce these different kind of values. All right. So this is what I use a lot. All right, something else. So we would now go through and make sure that we have a description and that we have defined the type for everything. So let's maybe quickly do this here. So for example, superhost could be something that we can just do as a Boolean. So it's either yes or no. And account type then would be the same like account status, that we use a string, but we have value constraints, and then we can add this kind of ruling here as well.